just have all the tools, but none of the filler in the mid game. So pretty good to keep an eye on that. But again, interesting to see where if this was against like Diana playing Highlander Priest, I would think Payne's got a really good shot. But with all these 2-ofs from this Priest and all this like the double Pyromancer with the AoE removal, this could be a moment where if a Nazami Bloodweaver can stick, those reductions will help, because all of those small spells you're generating and then getting reduced, I feel at least, Derek, are quite effective against the Token Druid.
I think you're right. I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup, because one of the reasons why I'm not personally such a big fan of Diana's build of Priest is the fact that Highlander Priest, or the more traditional 2-of build of Priest, they just play a big minion each turn on curve, and it's usually better than whatever your opponent is going to do. And when you factor in Apotheosis, Zephyrus, it's very, very powerful. This deck is a little bit lighter on just the strong minions that you can throw down, but if you do hit the ones that are in there, as I said, like Sethic and Nazmani, your point is absolutely valid. It's very, very difficult for Druid to fight back and find any kind of tempo, especially when it's this form of Druid, which is, a little bit fairly linear in its strategy. It doesn't have many comeback mechanisms.
And look, as we get into game number 1, and this opening for Payne, not looking too great, honestly. It could pop off at any moment because of the innovates, but nothing early on as of yet, whereas Diana has coin with either now Twilight Drake or getting one of those Bloodweavers down nice and early, and this Druid, frankly, cannot deal 5 off the board to this Bloodweaver, so things could go pretty nutty pretty quickly here, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely coining out one of my cards here. I'm not entirely sure which one I prefer, because Twilight Drake, obviously a bit more attack on the board, a little bit more health as well, but you should be able to potentially cheapen it even further when you go Draconic Studies Twilight Drake next turn, so this works out pretty nicely overall.
And this is just not really what you're after, is it? He can go Innovate, Arbor up.
Yeah.
He would have to do it twice, because the Innovate, even though it's 0, would count as using that reduction. So he would end up having to double Innovate still. But honestly, do you feel like he has to at this point?
So I'm thinking, what are you expecting from your opponent? That is definitely the only real play that I'm seeing, other than just effectively passing on this turn for Payne. With a coin into Nazmani here, you're definitely thinking Apotheosis could be the play, which would buff it up to 8 health, and then on the following turn, Wrath Hero Power plus one of the Arbor Ups does clear it. So even with the expected play, double Vate Arbor Up does look reasonable. The problem, of course, comes with this hand, that if you do go double Innovate Arbor Up here and one of the trees dies, these aeroponics are looking pretty weak all of a sudden.
Right. Really tough call. We see Payne actually did choose to effectively pass. He got the 1 damage in, of course, but now the problem is effectively doubled for him. He can play the Arbor up, and now he is going to be able to draw some cards, and this card draw is the only thing that's really going to keep Payne in the driver's seat in this game.
I love that, as I just said, I wasn't such a fan of Diana's build of Priest. He's about to cheat 50,000 trillion mana on this turn and play his entire deck for
cheat
free.
So much mana, he's going to start the next game with 5 coins.
Yeah,
this is what you've owed.
Through.
This is the payoff on the investment.
Oh, man. I mean, those aren't really what you're looking for, but I guess Runaway Blackwing is just like a big minion that does something the turn you play it.
It's tough, right? Because I'm half looking at Alexstrasza, because based on the plan, these might be playable soon, right? With the double Bloodweaver on board.
That is true. One thing I will say is that while the first coin Bloodweaver I could definitely get on board with, the second one that he did instead of the Drake all of a sudden did start to look a little bit suspicious, because while obviously, yes, he does bank a lot more mana with this play, your opponent going Arbor up here was fairly expected, I think we can say, and it did mean that it was a little bit more difficult to trade off this entire board, whereas with Silence and the Drake played 1 turn earlier, could have got a full board clear here. Yeah,
and it's not like the hand was full of cheap spells, right? To say, if these stick, it doesn't really matter what happens, because I'm going to have a 0-cost hand at that point. So yeah, a little bit dry on the old spells, but now there's just frankly a 4-mana Soul Mirror in hand. If this board is traded off, there's Raise Dead to help out with that as well. And the likelihood on this whole board going away is very slim anyway. I think, again, Dan is probably expecting to lose what that low health Bloodweaver, and that's probably it. For Pain, I'm honestly wondering, and it looks really bad, but I'm wondering whether this is like an overgrowth turn, and just say he's going to play the slightly slower game that Token Druid can play.
Yeah. I've got to be honest, I was definitely looking at that. Like, if you go overgrowth into nature studies, maybe you find Cenarian Ward, and then you can go Bloom, Solar Eclipse, Cenarian Ward, and get a huge amount of pressure on board. He does end the turn with the copy of Nature Studies, which I am a big fan of. Gives him an Overflow, which is a premium card to find here, make no mistake.
We will feed
They're back.
Oh my god. Man, this Soul Mirror, like, whether or not Pain expects it, is just so much tempo, no matter what kind of a board state he makes.
And this is it, right? Although, again, we're used to seeing slightly different versions of Priest recently, the way this has just panned out means, okay, well, Diana's still got the board, and all these huge payoff cards are getting cheaper. You mentioned the 4-mana Soul Mirror. The Yogg, slightly cheaper, not really crazy yet. But look at this renewing hand with the second Bloodweaver. If that comes down next turn, well, the reductions are only hitting huge cards.
Problem is, no matter how you sequence this here, this is awkward for Pain, because he has the mana banked from the Nature Study, so he doesn't want to start Lightning Bloom, but he doesn't want to start Lunar Eclipse, because if he does, then the Lightning Bloom will eat up the minus 2 cost on the next spell. So just starting Overflow looks like what he's going for here. Does mean he'll burn a card.
I think this is why I was really focused on Overgrowth that last turn.
Yeah.
Because I feel like just more mana gives him more stuff to do, right? Because he only needs one good draw, and then he is quite easily back in the game. But he's going to go a slightly different way around this.
Okay, I'm okay with this line. It does use up a Solar Flare, which is pretty brutal. Like, we all know the power of Solar Flare plus Arbor Up later on, but it means he gets to keep the Lightning Blooms, get the cards drawn, and all of a sudden, with Goru able to come down next turn, this is turning around drastically for Pain in a game that I was kind of writing him out of already.
And this is it, isn't it? Down and Out has had a fantastic start to the game, but there needs to be a way to finish the game. And I think that's what you were touching on earlier when we were just talking about the deck in general, is you can do some cool stuff. There's a 4-mana Soul Mirror in hand. Cool stuff has happened. But you need to be able to actually win the game. You need like that kind of payoff, which honestly, I'm just staring at Yogg, Derek. I'm just waiting. There's double Renew in hand now and the Radiance with the 2 Bloodweavers down. Oh, sorry, the 1 Bloodweaver down, 1 died. Apologies.
Yeah, make no mistake. Disgusting.
Luminance, potentially.
Oh my lord! You could take Penance in the hope that it just gets hit by the reduction at some point, but this is fine as well.
I think a bigger payoff was fine because the Cobalt Scalebane's already there to kill the Goru if needed, right? So again, now there's this 1-mana Soul Mirror and a 6-mana Soul Mirror against a deck that often does not make minions that have higher health than attack, right? So it's pretty much guaranteed a board clear every time.
Nice Goru buff when your opponent has a 1-mana Soul Mirror. I am not anticipating that does all too much.
I imagine these are going to be overloaded for Rush to try and just finally clear up these minions. Or at least work towards killing the Bloodweaver maybe for the last time.
Yeah, I guess so. Given that they're 3/3s now, they do trade a little bit more enticingly. And you could even bloom out the Soul of the Forest if you wanted to. It's not terrible. Yeah, I'm on board with this line. He is heavily overloaded, make no mistake as well, but the Solar plus Savage is looking like it could just wrap up the game next turn if Diana doesn't have the answer.
I have a question for you, Derek. In all your games of Hearthstone, casting and playing, have you ever said the words, I think there's a double Soul Mirror clear here? Because I've not.
That is a first, I will admit that.
Yep.
I am yet to see a double Soul Mirror play being correct, I will say as well.
That's true, but when you mentioned against Druid, whenever they have a board and they've got a handful of cards, you do have to be wary of Solar plus Savage. because you do just die. There's, of course, going to be a better clear here with that Pyromancer helping out.
It's fairly expensive, though, to be fair. Like, I think this line is probably correct, because he couldn't have played expensive Soul Mirror plus Hysteria to clear up. So this, I think, is perfectly acceptable as well.
Yorgum! So just play it and hope. Oh, it has to be Soul Mirror, right?
I mean, it's either Soul Mirror or Yogg-Saron. Like, Yogg-Saron is probably not the play. I do think it is just Soul Mirror, but it can't be Blackwing. You know you're going to die there.
And this is one of the reasons why this Druid deck can go slower, because now Diana has to respect every board that exists, because there are so many cards in Pain's hand that you would even expect at least one of them to be Savage Draw at this point. 9 cards left. It's almost certain that there's at least a Savage Draw in there.
Okay, that's reasonable in terms of what you can expect on average. On a way, playing that, it wouldn't give me extra cards to get used to that.
He can just go again with Glowflies, and he's seen he's bore the brunt of double Soul Mirrors back to back, and this Glowfly might just feel safe at this point, honestly.
Yep, this is the one. Glowfly, Lightning Bloom, Soul of the Forest. And that's got to get you there, because at this point, I'm not seeing many big boards left for Pain.
Right.
And to be honest, I think it very possibly will get there, unless this Yogg pulls something pretty magical out of its hat.
I'm still wondering where it wears its hat. But yeah, I am looking forward to seeing
above
how
its
this
eyes,
goes.
Raven, obviously.
I'd love it if it's just the tiniest of top hats.
All right, here we go.
There was any reason to Cleric first, so I do like just going for it here.
Oh, that eats everything up!
And the Pain's like, whoa, 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 you can have the first lot, you ain't having the second.
That actually just buffed his board, if anything. And I am not seeing anything that Diana can get here to fend this off.
Nope.
Pain in the end, despite a very weak early game. And Diana having pretty much close to the nuts that you can have with this deck of double Nazmani, a whole bunch of tempo, and mana being cheated out. Still not enough to survive against this onslaught, as Pain does a quadrillion damage here.
Yeah, and we do see the differences in Pain's approach to Token Druid, right? It is the Treant focus, but really having those rush Treants that he chose to spend that, the overload on, it really made the difference. They allowed him to actually fight back on board, remove the threats that are going to keep trading, and then it was just a matter of just keep building boards until it's done. And he got through 2 Soul Mirrors and still ended up with enough to take the game. So really, really impressive. And I think, honestly, from everything we've spoken about Diana's Priest, he is 2-0 in this tournament, so something's going right. But that's kind of that game is what I've seen from that Priest before, right? You do cool stuff, but then your opponent just does the thing the deck's built for and kills you. So it's a really, really tough one, and he's, of course, it's only game number 1, so there's still a good chance.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've likened this Priest deck before to the guy with the scimitar in Indiana Jones who swings it about. And then he just gets shot by his opponent. It looks cool, but ultimately it really doesn't accomplish all that much most of the time. Maybe not the best example there. He did miss out on the Sethic Veil Weaver, which is a very key component of the deck. But this is kind of what we say every time. You always find some of it, miss some of the other part, whereas Highlander Priest just dumps a big dumb idiot down each turn, and usually that's enough to come away with the win. But Druid taking the win there is a pretty big deal for Pain. As I was saying, it can be a deck that is very susceptible if your opponent does get that nice aggressive lock on the board right away. And so it's looking like could be a very strong way for him to go up 3-0 at the start of the Swiss.
And this was the turn, really, for me, that really just put Diana on the back foot for the first time in that game. The rush made a big difference. It forced him to have to pull out this clear and the Soul Mirror, but then that meant Diana could not develop on the board on the same turn, right? So then, okay, Pain just said, right, I'll either draw or guess what? Here's another board. Okay, another Soul Mirror. And it really was just another board after that clear. So, well played from Pain. I do like the hand. He's like, whoa, 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 stop. Treants alone, that's enough. But as you can see, the double Savage Draw in hand and the Solar Eclipse was more than enough damage to end game number 1. So Pain going to take a game off Diana here and make that first stride, as you mentioned, towards that 3-0 start, which is a fantastic start to the day here.
It is indeed. The two remaining decks that he has, taking a look at bans as well, is the Zoo, the Rogue, and the Paladin. So very, very aggressive overall with what he has left over, which I think is what players, for the most part, have not been in favor of. The OTK versions seem to be doing a little bit better, but no matter which Masters Tour, no matter what the meta is, there's always a home for just 4 aggro decks to get the job done.
Yeah, and we've even seen a lot of these aggro decks have ways now, as I think you talked about earlier, one of us lot talked about it, wasn't me, that a lot of the aggro decks right now have ways to just keep going. It isn't like they used to be where you had 5, maybe 6 turns of power, and if that didn't work, you may as well concede because you're out of juice. Like the decks, especially Rogue, with the likes of Secret Passage, just have ways to just keep throwing stuff down and keep attacking, and forcing their opponents into really awkward situations. And Zoo might well actually be the original of those types of aggro decks that can do that, right? Because of life tap. They've always had a way to keep the resources going, and it looks like Payne's going to lock it in for our next game.
Yeah, I think the Zoo is a very respectable bring to the tournament. It all but disappeared from ladder over the past few months, as, you know, it's been hit by a few nerfs. We, of course, remember the Scrap Imp when that was part of the deck, and that got cut in terms of the buff that it gave the rest of your minions, so that went by the wayside. And then, of course, Dark Glare went from a 3/4 that restores 2 mana each time you take damage to a 2/3 that restores 1 mana every time you take damage. And I think people, while they initially said the deck's dead, Zoo is just completely over, upon closer inspection they realized, hold up, this is still absolutely broken. You can just go Flame Imp, Tour Guide, tap, and vomit your entire hand on turn 2 or 3, which a lot of decks right now are not really equipped to deal with, especially when you have the extra buff that can come from Wriggling Horror and +1/+1 to everything from Wicked Whispers, as it is.
Yeah, I could see the from
Wicked Whispers there.
It's a big deal, and I think, again, most importantly, Zoo does suffer from obviously self-damage, right? Like, you can have that approach where as long as you're not dying, they actually end up killing themselves slowly, and
right.
they need to make that final push. But they do have just resource after resource after resource, so they can keep going, and it looks like Dana, once again, is locking in that Priest. So it's another test for this Priest deck, honestly. The Veilweaver's there, the Bloodweaver's there, but is it going to be enough to beat back Warlock, because they're not throwing out like small minions a lot of the time, right?
That's true, but I mean, if you're going to beat Zoo with any hand, this has to be one that can do it, right? This is the dream hand for Diana's deck here. He has the ability to go for a Pyromancer sweep if that is required. He also has the ability to just dominate the board early on. This Veilweaver Silence plus Bloodweaver as well. I'm not sure what he's weaving out of blood and veils, but it's going to be something impressive.
This, the Revenant Rascal is actually could be a bit of a problem here for Diana. Obviously, he's not running 2, or he's not got 2 in hand, should I say, and there's no Raised Dead. Sorry, I forgot the card name then as well. There's no Raised Dead yet, but even just dropping 1 down, it makes those combos that little bit more difficult to pull off. So Payne, I don't want to say going all in with this turn, but definitely putting a lot on the board here and relying on this Rascal to just reduce the response that Diana can give, because this board is actually already a problem here.
Yeah, I do. While I think this board is a problem, one thing that I will say is that, weirdly enough, I feel like this version of Priest from Diana is fairly resistant to Revenant Rascal because it's so low curving, and as soon as you get down the Nazmani on board, it's kind of good that your opponent has less mana to be able to answer it, because your entire hand's going to cost 0 at some point anyway. And so while I do think the Revenant Rascal is a very cool inclusion and a very strong card in a lot of matchups, here, I think Diana is still okay. With this very strong starting hand, this can definitely overcome it.
Yeah, also as well, Diana just running that 1 natural silence, paying off already. That Dark Glare not only reduced its stats, but removed its key ability to help Payne, even if he had less mana, to actually keep generating more resources and being able to play them out. So he's going to be just dropping down that Rascal and seeing what happens. And funnily enough, Diana doesn't have too much to poke. Never mind. There's Apotheosis. I take it all back, Derek. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and while Diana is obviously undeniably getting very, very fortunate here, I do like a couple of things that he's done very, very nicely. First of all is playing the Nazmani at all last turn, which you could see he was clearly leaning towards the Renew at first, just to kind of get maximum farm out of the Veil Weaver. He got massively rewarded because it was the 1 in 5 for Renew to be reduced in cost, and he got it. But then the other thing I really like is picking the Shadow of Death there, actually, over the Insight, because one of the things that you can really lose to here is, of course, the Flesh Giant, or even just a Nightshade Matron as a 5/5 can be very scary. So I like the respect he's playing to some of the bigger cards in his opponent's deck.
And you know what's pretty crazy? There's the Psyche split in the hand, and I don't really see a great way that this Bloodweaver is going to get killed this turn, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, he has a turn to kill it next turn, obviously, with the mana reduction. But even then, you're not wrong. It's looking good still for Diana.
He will just need maybe just this next draw to go his way to help maybe with the Pyromancer as well, you know, just to have something proactive to do this turn. But honestly, even if it's just kill the Voidwalker and heal the Bloodweaver up, it's still not a bad turn in any way.
I mean, so much of his deck is good here as well. Like that, fine. Absolutely fine. You could maybe even get away with casting that on Pyromancer just to get a sweep effect on the 2/1 as well.
I think I do like it on the Bloodweaver. Okay. Because yet again, this is close to not dying this turn. The Broom might have something to say about it, though. Okay. So he's going to get away with it, this Broom, and he has to trade everything in and basically pass over his turn. But if that didn't die and Psyche Split landed, the game would probably end.
Yeah, that was just GG. Little does he know he's going to be subject to Wild Pyromancer plus Psych. Oh, no, never mind. Okay. Cobalt Spellkin instead. A little bit more sensible.
Yeah, the AoE just goes off and Payne's like, I didn't hit anything.
It's about sending a message.
Flame Imp is there with the Dark Glow, just to be able to get the mana back and get this Voidwalker down. Double Flesh Giant in hand for Payne, and honestly, he must just be relying on that at this point, right? Is he just going, okay, these Flesh Giants need to stick, and they need to hit face a few times.
Oh, the Raised Dead on the Sethic and the Nazmani is disgusting here. The buffs can just keep on coming. The card draw can just keep on coming. I mean, I don't even know what the best thing you can do here. Like, Psych Split is insane. A Pyro Clear is pretty insane. Just going with Sethic plus Nazmani and probably getting 1 million cards reduced is also insane.
Yeah, this is where Dan has found himself a spot to just play Zoo at their own game, right? Like, if you can push Zoo off the board, they will never beat you. And now he has a 4/6 and a 4/7 against Payne's Flame Imp, which is not going to be great. Double Flesh Giant is going to come down, of course, but one's already dead to a 1-mana Shadow of Death, so there's only one more to deal with. Dan is looking really good right now.
Yeah, I think this is very, very manageable. Especially as the other thing we have to bear in mind is that while Diana has undeniably been playing, the control deck in this instance, I suppose, by removing everything, he can transition very rapidly to the aggro here and force Payne to start trading away, especially with just the absolute perfect Soul Mirror off the top. My lord.
You know when you lose a game of Hearthstone and you just tell yourself that you were never meant to win it? I think that's what Payne might be feeling right now, because it's all gone wrong.
That's what I tell myself after every loss. I've become a big believer in fate since playing Hearthstone. Nothing is ever my fault. It always is just the will of the gods. But, I mean, something was clearly on Diana's side there, because even, as I said, with some very nice plays along the way that made sure that he definitely deserved the victory, that was just an absolutely disgusting outing from his priest.
Yeah, and there was just nothing Payne could do to get back. There was the go, and you saw him go for the setup. He knew he had the 2 giants. If they landed, and if they could just hit, even if both of them could hit once, suddenly the health totals are evened up. Maybe there's a chance. But the Soul Mirror, just the rubbing the final salt in the wound there to clean that up without any effort whatsoever, means that this series is all down to a 1-1 so far. So a pretty big deal for both these players here. Diana may be feeling a lot better now that the priest didn't look great at all in game 1 and then looked dominating in game number 2. So it's going to make you feel a little bit better about your lineup choices. Lorinda was mentioning earlier, around this sort of time in the tournament, the players really start to get a feel of whether they got the lineup right, so to speak, or not.
Yeah, indeed. And I think for Pain here, you know, when you go for this full aggro deck, I never think you feel like you made the mistake so much. It's just whether you hit some of the wrong opponents, because for the most part, you're just going to have very decent matchups across the board. It's kind of what aggro does. It's only if they have a full anti-aggro lineup that you hit the truly disastrous ones. So I think here he will feel perfectly fine about his lineup, as he should. Just needs to get a win with the Zoo now. But for Diana on the other side, his lineup overall, which we haven't necessarily talked about in its totality, is just a pretty weird old hodgepodge. It's not necessarily got a strong theme like some of the others do. He's got OTK Demon Hunter, this you know, weird kind of version of Priest with the Nazmanis in there. He's got World Kick Rogue with only one World Kick, and then just Highlander Druid as well. It's just kind of good decks, I suppose, would be the best description of it.
Yeah, and although with all the tournaments we've seen in Cast, we know there's a lot that goes into this lineup preparation, right? And we see some lineups that have a clear goal in mind. We talk about the aggro lineups, the control, anti-combo, so on, so on. But I will never really take it away from someone if they're just like, yeah, I'm playing what I think are just the 4 best decks, for example, or the 4 best decks for this tournament, because there's no grand strategy. I just think in a vacuum, each one of these decks are strong, therefore they will win a lot. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what Diana's done, but that's what the lineup looks like anyway. But we can check out this OTK Demon Hunter. Derek, are you a fan of this archetype?
I mean, I can appreciate it for what it is. I'm not very good at it, I will say. I have struggled a lot getting to learn this deck, and you know, it's very easy to fall into your own habits, and I think this is a deck that I did that a lot. I started to feel like, okay, I'm getting the hang of this now. I know which pieces to keep. I know what is expendable. Starting to get a good idea of the numbers that you can do with combo pieces. And then I played like 2 games in a practice group with Dead Draw in the call and realized, oh my god, I'm the worst player to ever touch the game in history. Every single decision he was like, no, I disagree. And it's very emblematic of the deck in total. It's an extremely complicated deck, but one that if you do master it, you can clearly do incredibly well with. Rekvam, another player who's going to be who's competing this weekend, has got rank 1 legend with it. I don't even know how many times. Frozen as well, right. Who everyone knows and loves from the Americas region, has had tremendous amount of success with it as well. But it really is one of those decks. Either it clicks with you or it doesn't. And for me, I have yet to find my rhythm with it.
Yeah, it also is. I think it's important to note when you face this on ladder, or if you've seen it, you know, played in a tournament like today, it will look incredibly broken. You will just think, how is this okay? They're healing, so they're not dying. They have AoE, and they can one-shot you. Like, this seems broken and not fair, but I will just mention it does have a certain level of that failure rate, right? Of if you skull and you don't hit anything good, if just hand positioning, it can be awkward. If you naturally draw like Il'gynoth at a weird time, that makes that a little bit more awkward, because if Il'gynoth ever blocks a skull from being played on the far side, that is a very problematic thing, because you can't just, okay, I'll just throw away Il'gynoth and play my skull. Oh, wait. So there are certain hurdles that you have to get over, and I imagine there's a certain percentage of games that you will lose because of that. Yep. But there is so much like win percentage you can gain from like the tiniest of plays, whether it's feeling the freedom to use a card that you think might be key, a little bit earlier than you feel you should normally, or whether it's being stingy with your resource and saying, no, I won't die yet, and the healing will come.
I mean, you're absolutely right, but a lot of players have expressed their opinions on the power of the deck. Now Godan sent out his, once a monthly, this is the worst metagame of all time tweet that you can set your watch to, saying that
that's what that alarm might have been earlier on, right?
Time to tweet out worst meta of all time. Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with him, but I can fully understand how you would think that, because it is a deck, as you said, when you lose to it, you just get absolutely blown out of the water. However, in this game that we see now, Diana was looking like he had a bit of a rough hand to get things going, light on draw, heavy on combo pieces, like the Philosophy and the Ethereal Orc Merchant, but that card off the top looks pretty fantastic to me.
It does, and one of the more successful styles I've seen against the Demon Hunter like this is if you are playing aggressive enough, even though they might have access to some heal, if they're spending mana on healing and and removal, they actually end up not drawing a lot of cards because you still need the mana to play the card draw, right? So with this Zoo list, there is a chance that if Pain doesn't make turns like this, which is just a 2-1, if it could go a little bit faster, then it would be... There's a way that you can just be fast enough to just get the job done and dodge the OTK and the clears.
I'm kind of undecided if that was a good turn or a bad turn from Pain. Like, obviously, in one way, it was awful. He just played Wriggling Horror with no buffs, but he did discard Hand of Gul'dan, which is kind of always what you want to do in the matchup. So, I don't know, whether or not he liked it or not, the game has begun. He can start doing strong stuff now.
It was like the world's shortest roller coaster that turn, wasn't it? You dip down and you're like, ah, and then you go up here, oh, okay. But that's it. There's no rest of the track. That's just the whole thing done. Because it looked bad, but in the end, it might just pay off.
A strange but apt metaphor, as always, Raven.
Kind of made sense if you didn't think about it.
The downside, of course, which I think that in Diana's head, he was thinking, okay, I don't have to play the Spectral Sight here because it'll very easily be outcastable from the left side of my hand, which is always what you have to think of as Demon Hunter. That clearly was not the case because he has not found a Moarg to go alongside this philosophy. Having said that, though, given that he has Skull of Gul'dan in hand, Illidari means that it will be playable next turn. I'm kind of on board with just dumping this philosophy for no value.
Yeah, I think that's... And again, there's so much extra in this deck. You don't need a set number of combo pieces, right? You don't have to use every philosophy. You don't have to use every single lifesteal or damage piece to kill your opponent. You just need enough. And especially against Warlock, it's not like he's going to need to do 40 plus damage, right? He'll probably end up needing to do like 20 in the long run. So... Still looking pretty okay. I do like this. The coin into Skull is going to look pretty sick next turn.
Yeah, I think for, as you said, for Diana here, this is a very, very healthy way to go about it. A lot of these aggro decks like aggro rogue, or even to an extent spell damage mage, kind of, you can get away with not needing all the burst damage. It didn't work out for Dead Draw, as we saw, who threw down a tempo Il'gynoth earlier on today. But it's still an interesting way to approach things. Now, of course, for Diana... Obviously, I'm looking primarily at just coin Skull. I don't even think there's anything that could tempt me away from doing it, even if it involves guaranteeing a clear on this... I'm forgetting the name of the card all of a sudden. Wow, the 2-3.
The Dark Glare?
The Dark Glare, that is the name of it.
Yeah, It's mainly because with the card draw from the Skull, all the damage he takes, which is not even that much, if he does, even if he didn't trade at all, it wouldn't be that much, and he's going to heal it back up, right? You would imagine with the Skull draw, there'll be AoE probably, or more lifesteal, or a Moarg. He is going to go for a bit of a slower approach on this Skull, and honestly, this is a level of respect for this Dark Glare that I'm kind of with you. I would not have cared, but then again, I'm not a specialist Demon Hunter player at the moment, so maybe Dana sees things we don't.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing about Skull is, you know, by spending the mana on it now, it does not necessarily mean that is the only way that you can cast all the cards from it next turn. They're probably all going to cost 0, so in a way, it doesn't matter whether you cast it turn 5 or turn 6, but it just gives you so many extra options, being able to plan your turn the next turn a lot more easily. So I am still skeptical.
Yeah, I think... oh, okay, well, that's just funny. Well, what interested me was I felt like the board was only going to get worse after that, and if he's spending mana on the Skull, like, as you said, there might have been more options the turn after. I mean, maybe, you never know, he might just win the game the turn after at that point, but now he has to consider how and can he kill this giant, because suddenly, although these tools and these reductions are decent, they're not Moargs, which is what he's really looking for at this point in the game.
Right, but I mean, at the same time, he is pretty close to just winning the game now, actually, with 3 combo cards reduced there. As Soul Cleave is not a common combo card to be used, but it still works.
It does the job, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so just by holding back completely here, and then next turn, probably coin Skull again, he can maybe use one of these I-Beams, one of these Soul Cleaves in order to just stay alive. And then, absolutely, turn after, you just try and go for the lethal.
Pain is going to gain this, the Minari Mosha, which has become super common in Zoo now. It's going to help him out, you know, with that that life total issue by going him up to 27 this turn. And again, you say that Diana might just be close to winning. Well, to me, yeah. Pain's pretty much there unless Diana does something pretty incredible, but the Skull is known to unleash incredible turns, Derek, and that's Skull number 2 for this game.
Exactly. Even if he doesn't save all these combo pieces, if he gets himself a single Moarg, Thalnos, anything like that, he can just start to obliterate this board and heal up for a ludicrous amount at the same time. That alone, again, while it's not a Moarg, is still a very welcome draw.
Wait. Yeah, he can only play one I-Beam, though.
I mean, he can play 2 Fell Screams, an I-Beam, and a Soul Cleave. Like, I'm not saying he should play all that, but he can absolutely survive the turn if he wants to.
He can not die next turn.
Yeah,
pretty much 100% of the time.
It's just it's the heart of the deck, right? This is where the real, the best players of Demon Hunter come into play, because it's about balance. It's about making sure you have just enough combo pieces left over whilst also staying alive.
Still no Moarg. There's 9 cards left in the deck, and 2 of them are Moarg.
So if he goes I-Beam, Immolation Aura,
Soul Cleave,
and then Fell Scream Blast, or Soul Cleave, yep, either way, he'll be able to clear the board.
Okay. There was just a moment, as always, with the rope where I was like, please finish your turn. But of course,
I mean, this is fine. This is absolutely fine for Diana with the Fell Scream and the IB. More than enough pieces to activate the combo. He's just got to get those Moargs in time now, because Pain is not letting up 1 iota. Double Giant, Flame Imp coming down. This is a tremendous amount of pressure.
It's interesting, right? Because does the Flame Imp end up changing much? He's doing 3 damage to himself, worth having a 3/2 on board that dies to almost anything that Diana has, whereas he could just have 2 8/8s and try and 2-turn.
That is an interesting idea. I mean, if it doesn't get removed, which he can make it a little bit harder to do with Wicked Whispers, then it is a big deal, but it doesn't mean he has to lose the Soulfire, which is just 4 damage, which is what he would be gaining anyway.
Exactly, and this doesn't set up lethal anyway, right? So I don't know. That's definitely a tricky turn, but I do think that's why he was pausing, right? To work out exactly if this Flame Imp was worth. Again, still no Moarg.
So straight up, next turn, there will be 9 damage plus 6, 15 damage as I count it, if you factor in the extra damage from a hero power plus the weapon with Il'gynoth.
Oh, okay, that's the benefit of the Flame Imp. It's a demon.
So it does mean there is obviously no lethal available right now. Only 1 Soulfire in the deck, so there is no lethal availability for
I was
Pain.
just about to check. I was like, wait a minute. And he also, didn't he use the Wicked Whispers earlier? The second one, or did he throw that?
He's used both, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Whoa. Is that just lethal available now, though? Everything that I said before was doubled, so it's 6, 12, 18, 24, I think?
Well, he can get the second Moarg, right, as well.
Right. In which case he can play both of them.
Oh, but he can only Fell Scream Blast. Yeah, he can only Fell Scream if he does that.
I'm not seeing lethal right now. And that play you just made locks in the second I-Beam is the problem with playing it so quickly.
So does he like double Moarg I-Beam?
I think it might be a heal turn rather than a...
Yeah. But then what's he even have left?
Very good question. Four damage AoE,
okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm safe. I mean, he does. He knows he's safe, right? Because there's no, like, as we were mentioning, there's no burst from Pain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the thing I was wondering is if he should potentially not have swung there, which would have left him dead instantly to the Wriggling Horror. But it might have meant that he could get more damage with the Il'gynoth, whereas, as you said, he is left very low on damage now to close out the game. There's 1 Moarg left in the deck, of course.
So surely he trades? Pain trades now, right? because both philosophies are gone. You've just seen a ton of the AoE and healing used.
Yeah.
He's at 21, which is a decent number. I really like the trade here. This is perfect.
Not an easy play to make. That card could be the difference maker here, though, for Diana. We are, of course, looking for Skull of Gul'dan as the premium outcome, but he could get another I-Beam in order to stay alive that little bit longer. He gets both, depending on what he wants more.
I mean, he can just math this, right? If this is a 3 out of 5 to draw Skull, to draw the second Moag, sorry. Right, and is that enough? If that's not enough, then take the second I-Beam. But my worry is, if he does
this is it. This is what I was thinking. Is it a tempo Il'gynoth time? He can clear the board, deal a huge chunk of damage, and Pain pretty much has to tap in order to keep his tempo going here.
This is a weird game. This is not OTK Demon Hunter.
I love this with Diana. I think this is such a clever line.
A little bit of healing helps. Solo Guide just doesn't really.
Yeah, I mean, we were looking for Big Guide plus Broom, really.
Okay, heals again, so pays for the tap. Okay.
Oh my god.
Armed, like, those minions are already dead to hero power trade.
I mean, I don't think he's trading, if I'm being honest. This is a 4 damage Il'gynoth if it goes face every turn. That feels pretty nice to me.
Oh right, and there's no heal left as well for Pain. Oh, there's no the buff heal, should I say?
That's just a 4/4. That's a pretty good card to draw here for Diana, all things considered. Lethal setup on this turn. Pain has to find some way to clear this. Oh!
Servants of the Black Harvest!
Oh!
Rush, big
The
deal.
Nightshade? That's insane. He has lethal represented. Diana does not have lethal on his side.
Oh.
Oh! One off? One off?
Can he get? Does he have a second Eldraki, or did he use them both?
He's used them both. I don't think there's any damage in the deck. Right? Oh! There was nothing. He knew it. He was 1 damage off of closing the game. If he had gone face instead of killing the 1/1 tour guide on the previous turn, he may have just won that game.
That was insane. And like I mentioned earlier, that when I mentioned that there are some like failure rates of that deck of the OTK Demon Hunter, we kind of saw one there with the 2 Moags being so low in the deck, like almost at the bottom, causes huge issues, because if he even drew 1 Moag halfway through the game, he will win, because he had the philosophy, he'd make 2, job done, game over. But that wasn't the case, and I think although Diana lost, I think he actually approached those awkward situations very, very well indeed. And again, on the other side of that, Pain did a really good job of just making correct decisions to keep the pressure up whilst reacting to certain situations. Like I said, he put 10 damage into a Moag, right? Which looks kind of weird, but when you know what this OTK Demon Hunter is capable of, then it makes sense. So just a really nutty game overall, honestly. I enjoyed that one.
Indeed. I liked a lot of what I saw from Diana. For the vast majority of the game, I was very, very impressed. A couple of points I had question marks on, like one where I was saying he could not have swung with the Eldraki. Admittedly would have instantly lost him the game had he gone for that line, but I still think, like, you know, saving a bit of extra damage was something considering, and then at the end, killing the tour guide with the hero power instead of going face. Whether or not that was predictable in that instance, given, you know, you are aware of what cards are left in your opponent's deck, I think it was very possible he could have managed to just squeak out a win, whereas in the end, the absolute finest of margins was the difference maker there. What a game.
Yeah, there was everything, right? Like, I was talking about, do you even play the Flame Imp? He did play it, and he ended up recuperating that health because of the Manari that went onto the... But also, he pushed the extra damage. So all these tough decisions on both sides of this board made this game pretty unique, honestly. And this Canrithid coming down was just the final nail in the coffin, and just enough there to get the job done. But honestly, pretty well played for both players. That must have been a stressful one, and it does mean that Pain goes 2-1 up versus Diana so far.
Yeah, absolutely love to see it there. And while I was mainly talking about Diana because he, for the most part, had the more difficult decisions, I think it's fair to say, I liked a lot of what I saw from Pain in that game as well. It was, for the most part, fairly standard Zoo play, but, you know, going for the turn 3, discarding Hand of Gul'dan doesn't seem especially complex. But overall, it was just, I think, good understanding of how much you're supposed to develop, what you're supposed to keep behind, and comes away a deserved victor towards the end. They're 2-1 up now, only needing to win with one of his remaining decks. It's a big deal for these players. You know, we've seen from Diana, he hasn't necessarily had overall the most impressive placements in Masters Tours, but he's consistently been doing pretty well. He's towards the top in terms of most players of the overall prize winnings and points that he's earned towards, well, not Grandmasters because he is a player in the Chinese region, but still getting through to the top to prove he is in with the best of the players.
Yeah, and also just his lineup as well. I always like it when someone brings a lineup I just generally don't really expect, especially with that priest. So we'll see how it pays off. But for me, as you well know, Derek, this is, I think, one of, if not the best deck in the game, regardless of OTK Demon Hunter, regardless of everyone talking about Highlander Priest. I think Libram Paladin, although it doesn't do anything overly flashy, its strength is, I feel it just does well versus almost every deck that's in the meta right now. I feel like you never going into a particular matchup thinking this is going to be incredibly difficult. I always think, you know what, I've got a chance. I'm playing Libram Paladin.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. This is one of the things that I was being told during Yala's prep for Worlds all those months ago now, it seems at this point, was that Libram Paladin was just the secret brink, because at that point it was, you know, it was a deck, people were playing it, but it very much fallen by the wayside at the time, whereas now very much come back in full force in the metagame, and as the lists get more and more refined, I think it is becoming more and more of a contender. And I mean, I'm Team Crab all the way. I think that Crab Rider is a fantastic addition to the deck because it's just so flexible in the way you can play it. Given that Blessing of Wisdom has made its way into the vast majority of lists now, I think having that extra card draw capability is really what people realized was the part that was missing from the deck. You can't just play Libram Paladin as a curve deck where you play your biggest minion each turn. You need to draw a lot of cards so that you have that unbeatable late game state with Penflingers and Libram of Wisdoms, and Crab Rider suits that game plan beautifully in my opinion.
It really does, and it's, you know, Crab Rider, we are now splitting Libram Paladin of whether it includes Crab Rider or not, and the not option, more often than not, is going to be that Rally option, which does basically res a 1/2/3 cost minion, and for me, although I did try that list for a while to test it out, and although I feel the card is good, I feel it's not good at all stages of the game, right? On, you know, turn 10 onwards, Rally to summon, you know, maybe like a Broom, a Loot Hoarder, and Salet. Well, that late in the game, you've probably, you clearly already played a Salet, if that's what it brings, and you've already drawn the cards. Whereas a Crab Rider, even late in the game, you might have tons of Librams to put on it to make it a threat. You might have that Blessed of Wisdom to keep the draw going, and it's always a problem when a Wind Fury minion's on the board. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm on that Team Crab, a sentence I don't really imagine I'd ever say, but there we are. Here we are, though. It's going to be OTK Demon Hunter once again from Diana against this Paladin, and threat numero uno comes down now as the Crab Rider hits the board.
This is an interesting matchup for sure, because when I was going through testing and playing this matchup quite a bit with the guys, my initial reaction was just to say, oh, so is this a free win for the Demon Hunter? Because this Paladin deck is not especially aggressive a lot of the time. You know, as we were saying, Crab Rider does afford a bit of extra damage, but for the most part, the Demon Hunter can remove and then kill their opponent around turn 8 or 9 if they get a decent draw. And then I was very quickly disabused of that notion, correctly so, because this Paladin deck has some real punch and a lot of minions that are honestly really difficult for the Demon Hunter to clear.
I think that's exactly it, because these minions have quite high health. They might not have the highest attack in the world, but they have really high health. And as you can see right now, even these 2-drops aren't dying to, you know, that easily, right? Yeah. And if then suddenly start saying, oh, well, Moarg plus something kills them, it's like, Right, but then you're using Moags very early on in the game. So, yeah, I think this is a pretty close matchup. I think Demon Hunter can win, of course, but the Libram of Judgment we can even see on the far left of Payne's hand as one of the new additions to the deck can pack that final punch you might need to hit through some of that lifesteal as well.
It's a weird hand here for Diana because on the one hand, you of course have Coin Skull available next turn, which looks premium in my eyes. But then again, he has Il'gynoth in hand at 4 mana on the left-hand side, which is trapping that other skull from ever being outcastable, realistically. And even though there are many games where you do just play Skull of Gul'dan without the reduction of the reduction in cost of the cards drawn, it's never a situation that you're happy to be in.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I think in a similar fashion, Payne also has a weird hand, right? He has arguably the most just sheerly powerful cards in the deck in hand. He has drawn 0 Libram reduction so far, which is a bit of a problem.
He's got the same problem as I have, where there are just too many books is the problem with all of these Librams in hand.
I normally get this hand, but the other way round, where my Librams cost 0, I just can't draw them. And I'm like, come on!
You got to pick one or the other. No one is yet to get both.
And I like this, using this Byrov pretty easily in this matchup. There's no big boards you really need to clear, right? Just chuck it down, kill something, and move on.
Okay, that was reasonable. Getting 0 mana Moarg is easily the most critical combo piece to reduce down to 0, because then all of a sudden your philosophies copy 0 mana Moargs as opposed to 2 mana Moargs, and the amount of damage you can do just skyrockets exponentially at that point. But at the same time, the rest of his hand is looking a little bit less juicy, it's got to be said.
I do wish I could work out if Payne was thinking what I was thinking and be looking at that first day of school and thinking, will it get me Aldor Attendant? I really do with it right now. But of course, the reason most people hold on to it is that card next to it. It's a free proc for Penflinger when you need it.
Oh, it's just not what you want to be doing against Demon Hunter, is it? Like, dealing damage without developing board is just almost pointless at this point in the game because you know that they are going to heal it back up. What you want to be doing is playing big Librams of Hope, pen-flinging every turn, getting all these Libram of Wisdoms cast over and over again so that Lady Liadrin can give you that ultimate combo later on in the game. It's it ain't this.
And the big deal here as well is a single Aldor Truthseeker would change everything. Just one. You don't need more. You don't need the attendants as well. Just one Truthseeker would be the world of difference here to Payne and his hand, honestly.
This whole turn from Diana, I will say, seems a little bit weird, like going for the double jump to make sure that your one Spectral Sight doesn't draw 2 cards so you don't overdraw. I feel like there has to be a slightly more efficient way to go about that to maximize your card draw.
But look at this from Payne. Like, so bad, he's going to have to play a Broom, which is fine in this matchup. You don't normally need to rush things in. But just to play his 2-cost Libram of Wisdoms onto it so he can throw, like, 2 pens at Illidan. It's just not going to be... It's not enough pens.
He's almost drawn 8 Librams before he's drawn one of his 4 reducers of the Librams. This is very unfortunate.
Those 1-drops aren't really anything to shout about either, are they?
Hey, loser!
Not really.
Wasn't me!
Yeah, he's doing what he can to sneak in the damage, set up lethal.
And although Diana's turn, looked maybe strange, it was one heck of a setup turn, right? There's Il'gynoth, the Fell Scream, and then like the Moargs all in hand now, 3 of them. That's like that's a large amount of damage.
Is this just lethal now?
Probably, Derek. That's all I'm going to say.
With that being drawn as well, the Soul Cleave, that's 4 doubled 8, doubled 16, doubled... Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is lethal now for Diana, quite handsomely.
Yeah, and because he knew he was almost certainly not dead that turn, I think he did just want to make sure he had the Moargs. He knew the Il'gynoth was already there. And that is frankly a ton of damage, and Diana evens this up. And honestly, I do feel a bit for Pain because that is just one of those hands. Like I said, I normally get the other way where the Librams are reduced, I just can't draw them, but that was literally, he drew all the Librams and 0 reduction, which just stunted his turns, honestly. Everything was just that bit slower, and you even saw with that how close he got anyway.
Yeah, it was just a disaster. That is a perfect example of why Aldor Truthseeker is nigh on a 100% keep in every matchup. It is just so crucial to get that down in order to get your Libram of Wisdoms played over and over, to get those Librams of Hope actually playable, to start getting some threats down against Demon Hunter, because that, I mean, absolutely useless in the matchup. And the Demon Hunter does, in the end, take a win for Diana. And so while you were saying, and I was agreeing, the Libram Paladin feels like one of the most powerful decks in the metagame, if not the most powerful at the moment. It's been struggling today in the matches on stream. We have seen already Glory get reverse swept, 0-3 with his own Paladin. Now it's looking like Pains might be doing the same thing. Not a good start for him.
No, it's not. I do think, though, again, it's just when you play this many rounds of Swiss, this many games, you are going to hit the ones that don't draw well. I mean, just look at the previous game for Diana, right, with those Moags. It's just one of those things where you just, okay, that was a bad draw. I didn't hit any of the cards I needed to, or at least didn't hit the couple of cards I needed to. Let's move on. But it does mean this series is going to go down to game number 5. And just another reminder, both these players are currently 2-0. The winner will be 3-0. And the loser, of course, takes their first loss, which is something you want to avoid as long as possible. If you can go through day 1 without having a loss, or maybe, you know, going through 4-1, you're at such an advantage going through to day 2.
Yeah, absolutely right. Especially with the way the tiebreakers work, you definitely want to be taking your losses later on if possible, as opposed to earlier on, with the way that you get faced against stronger opponents if you do well earlier on. So it's a big deal for all of these players, absolutely. Diana is, you know, for the most part, in terms of the VK players, definitely contending up against Lion as the by far most well-known from Team VK. But overall, he could definitely make a name for himself here if he is able to go even just to the top 16 of one of these Masters Tours. Is a very impressive feat.
It really is, and like you said, getting off to a good start so far, but it will all come down to this last game. And honestly, just look at these lineups clash again and again. I think it's just going to be so cool this tournament. I think everyone's just generally hyped because, as we mentioned, or you guys mentioned in the opening, it's so late in a meta game. Normally when everyone's just dying to get the new cards, which I'm sure everyone still is, I am, but there's so much variety still going around and so many decks that I didn't even consider that people would submit, that, you know, top-end pros are playing and are putting in their lineups. So it's pretty sick to see all this, and it will continue, of course, all weekend. So make sure you tune in as much as possible. But this is going to come down to this game. And who do you think's got the better end of the stick here, Derek?
Well, depending on what the final game is from both of our players, I didn't catch what the ban was on Diana's side, but no matter what it is against the Paladin, like we were saying, I do think it is in a pretty good spot. Be it the Rogue on one side, which I imagine probably was the deck that was banned away all in all, it could be a very reasonable matchup, whereas the Druid on the other side, I do think is a little bit of a tougher one. Druid, again, is one of those decks that really does struggle with fighting off against those large minions that Paladin can throw down turn after turn, especially as a lot of the threats that Druid throws down are very easy for Paladin to answer because of the power of Barov and the Libram of Justice as well.
That's it. Normally, you know, that kind of Druid's looking to create a strong board and then build on that, build on having the huge minions down and keeping control of it. But like as you mentioned, one Libram, you know, one Barov with a broom or something going down, and the whole board goes, and the Druid has to start again. And it doesn't really excel at that other than in, you know, odd circumstances. So it could be pretty spicy whichever way we go here. I believe the players are just going to be getting into their game shortly, so apologies for the slight delay in going into our final game of the day. But just checking out this so far, let's have a look who else they beat here. Okay, Diana beat someone whose name isn't English, so I definitely can't read that. That's just a bad start. But Payne has beaten Suni 3-1 earlier, and I believe that was his first match, so a good victory there for him. But overall, are there any names that are sticking out to you so far? If we look at, you know, you can't see it, but we can see the overall results as we're in round 3.
Yeah, I mean, taking a look at the standings, Fury Hunter obviously getting off to a 3-0 start is, for me at least, I'm very, very happy for him. He's been, the starting curse, showing him the first round of each of the Masters Tours, and he's finally getting a good job done. I'm sure it's a little bit demoralizing for him for the first time. He's bringing the most normie lineup I think he's ever brought, with just the foremost standard decks, and all of a sudden he realized, oh, maybe all that prep I put into a bunch of random decks that weren't very good in the end was wasted. But while I am ragging on him, I am incredibly happy for him that he is getting the start that he was looking for. Fled, as we see there, a newly minted America's Grandmaster off to a 3-0 start as well. It's good to see some of the up-and-comers who have made it through to Grandmasters and those still trying to get there doing well, because I think Fled, despite making it through to Grandmasters, does still very much have a lot to prove once he's there, because he's playing with some pretty stiff competition.
That's it. I think any new Grandmaster that hasn't been in Grandmasters before, for example, I still think there is still that, okay, you made it, but there's the opening seasons to prove yourself, maybe even the opening year to say, well, you didn't just fluke, your way in or anything, like you deserve to be there, and I'm sure that'll be the case. But even look at some other names, like Jambraze 3-0, which is pretty hype as well.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait to see Shaman more on stream. I think that's going to be pretty hype. But finally, we can talk more about standings a little bit later on, because we are in game number 5. We apologize for the slight delay, but before we get into a game, we want to make sure all the players are good and ready to go. So it is going to be that Druid, Derek, the Highlander Druid, versus this Paladin.
And speaking of making sure all the players are good, Pain is very, very good at this game. Getting the Aldor Attendant into Hand of Adal, that is what you were looking for. Much more like it with this deck. Obviously, the rest of his hand looking a little bit more shaky, given that he has effectively nothing to play on this turn outside of, I suppose, Hero Power Broom if he wanted to clear off and get the damage face. But it's still looking a reasonable start, even if he is against what is a pretty premium hand from Diana as well.
And this is one of the queries I've been having about Paladin at the moment, is Libram of Justice 1 or 2? Because in the list I play, at least, I've been playing 1, because I do find 2 to be a little bit slow and clunky at times. And yes, this specific hand displays this point perfectly, very convenient. But I do think that 2 can be a bit much, especially in certain matchups, and we're seeing that hit just a little bit here for Pain.
Is this the Libram of Judgment?
Judgment, not Justice.
Yes.
Apologies. They sound so similar. Judgment, yes, apologies.
I absolutely agree. It's the kind of the argument I would give is it's like playing 2 Doomhammers in old aggro Shaman. You don't really want both, but you want to make sure that you draw one.
Sure.
I think that's a little bit more of a shaky argument than it was in Doomhammer in aggro Shaman, because it's not so critical a part of the deck. But when they do become activated, corrupted, and give you the lifesteal, you just have to see it once to realize the absolute ludicrous power of that card.
Yeah, you do kind of feel immortal at that point. But look at this hand from Dana as well. A card that always makes me just laugh a little bit when I'm against it or see it played is the fact that like Ysera Unleashed is in Highlander Druid. Just continues to show how powerful that card is, because its index on paper should not be in, yet it's still included, and people will still play it on curve, or like unless they have some Highlander cards like specifically in hand, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you are alluding to the fact that the portal's shuffled in because it is 7 copies of the same card.
Right.
Your Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, your Elise, and your Zephrys become inactive until you draw at least 6 of them. But you are absolutely right. It is just by far the most powerful late game card I think honestly ever printed in Hearthstone. Like, for what it does for one card in the late game is just ludicrous, and it can single-handedly win games very, very easily. But you got to get there first, and here for Diana, it was looking like a bit of a shaky turn. That very nicely smooths him over to the Ysera turn, though.
That's it, and because Pain didn't really get off to a flying start because of his hand, it does mean that Diana's managed to ramp up, and that is absurd. Gets the Katrina Moita down, which is going to help add that extra minion to the board. And as you said, it all looks great from here for Diana, right? You can see, as long as he feels fairly safe this turn, Ysera comes down, and then who knows what after that, even as Omu there with Swipe to have a really big blowout turn once again.
Having said that, though, this hand from Pain is kind of slowly and surreptitiously become very, very powerful. The Libram of Hope, although not available next turn, is again one of those very awkward minions for Diana or Druid in general to deal with. So I'm definitely not calling him out, but I mean, you know, as we were just talking about, it's Ysera Unleashed, and then just being able to go for Solar Eclipse Swipe to deal with those Divine Shields. That's the missing ingredient, is an easy way to clear off the Divine Shields, which Diana now has abundant access to.
I do wonder if it's still just Ysera this turn. I think it's just good enough. And then, because he's not going to die, right? Yes, there's some damage on the board, but you would imagine, especially after seeing that turn from Pain last turn, that there's not easy way to even kill the Ysera. And then he can go from there on the turns after. But it does look like he is going to go for the Omu turn instead. Be a little bit slower, clear off this Divine Shield, and develop a bit more of a board.
Interesting. Okay, I mean, this is obviously by far the much stronger immediate tempo turn, and by not overloading, it's still available to play Ysera on the following turn, and because of that, you know what? I'm actually on board with this line. The one kind of downside is obviously, while it is a better turn, quote-unquote, now, it does use up, as I was saying, one of those strongest pieces of removal in Swipe with the Solar Eclipse. But because he has such a dominating board presence here, he should hopefully just be able to value trade his way to clear the board every turn from now on.
Right. This is relying on either the draw off the top for Diana or Ysera just paying off relatively quickly, because, again, if your opponent's Paladin has sat on cards for a while, you are thinking, okay, Libram of Hopes are going to come down, maybe a Libram of Judgment as well, and those things are pretty difficult to clear, because it's not as if Diana is going to want to face tank the Divine Shield on the Libram of Hope. So, you know, he has got some time because of the ramp he had earlier on, but not too much time, and there is only the Omu right now on board for him.
And obviously from where Pain is sat, it could just be a Bog Beam in his opponent's hand, or some useless piece of removal instead of the most powerful card in the entire deck to come out. And when he gets the bad news, that is the only reaction that you can give there. I do like that Diana is just playing it out here. I think Elise first was a little bit too greedy and slow.
Now you imagine if he did it the other way round, and then he had Elise for like the Omu hand, was like, ooh.
Disgusting.
Oh, okay. That helps. He doesn't have to play it this turn, but just having Barov down available is absolutely huge when you know there are big dragons coming pretty soon.
Was that an innovate?
And that's the problem, right? Ysera comes down. It's great. It's super powerful. That at least is just a 5-mana 5/5 for the foreseeable future now.
I still like where Diana is sat, but the doubts are starting to creep in here. With 2 Libram of Judgments in hand, that is just lethal, obviously available if there are the 4 or 5 turns needed to get all the swings through.
I wonder where you were going with that. Maybe just admit it's like, I do like roughly where Diana is, but if he starts losing, I'm going to say he was wrong.
I don't like to commit to anything too heavily, Raven. I'm going to make the most generic statements possible every turn. That card was a 9-mana Dream Portal.
Your feeble magic amuses me.
And a pretty good one.
Yeah, I mean, only getting 1 portal might be a little bit disappointing, but it was a very good one, and it's probably enough, right? It's a taunt that isn't very easily interactable, so it means that Pain, or at least Diana might assume that Pain has to just swing into it this turn.
I mean, the big thing is that the weapon can't go face now, because Diana was actually going to start dying pretty quickly here. It can do, as we can see, obviously, with Barrow of Broomstick, but then, you know, that's the trump turn for Pain eaten up by a single Dream Portal on the other side, effectively, which you do have to be pretty cautious of.
And you even see the respect now, right? He doesn't want even just the weapon minion trade to happen.
Yeah.
He wants there to be a weapon swing and nothing happens to this taunt, but he's going to get the bad news pretty quickly.
I guess if you're going Barrow of Broomstick, you may as well just sacrifice the Barrow of In. There's not really any benefit to just taking the value trade and leaving the Ysera on board.
Wait, couldn't you have just hero powered and left the Barrow?
Yeah.
I think I would have gone Broom 1/1 into the 2 minions. and then just had a 3-2.
Yeah, he could have had a 4-5 barrow, 5-4
Yeah.
barrow up as well. Yeah. No, I agree.
Because at this point in the game, it's not like Pain is planning on winning the game with 1-1, so it's not like the barrow self-destructing next turn is a problem. There's nothing for it to hit.
Oh!
Well,
That is the juice for Diana. The absolute best card in his deck by a country mile. Pain, I mean, he's had a few bad beats here, but it's what the deck does. You know, there's quite a lot of card draw in there. It was going to hit that or something else eventually, but even so, it does sting.
it does. Pain can take some solace in the fact that the board is not full of dragons right now, because it could have been. So there was no actual dragon portal there, so at least if you're just looking for the silver lining, that does exist, but still, the cards that Diana did get were very, very good.
They were, and I think honestly here I'm kind of leaning towards Blackwing just to have an extra removal card.
You're missing it. Anixia next turn, Arbor up the turn after G to the G.
You know what? That is a level of Hearthstone play that I have just not reached quite yet. I am not at the level of seeing Anixia Arbor up as the win con. Because obviously a Blackwing swinging for 9 damage on the board every turn wasn't even close.
Here, though, is that the pain you get with this deck and the Libram of Justice also counting as a weapon is sometimes you just have to lose a charge on your corrupted Libram of Judgment. Wait, is he just going to swing? Okay, hold him back. Okay. This is basically assuming him assuming Downer's board is only going to get bigger next turn, so he wants to Libram next turn instead.
Luna into Arbor up. Worthy expedition just to get yourself a bigger card, because these are all a little underwhelming. Yeah, sure.
Runic Carvings Arbor up.
I'll raise you that. Anixia into Cenarius. How about that? A combo that will technically still exist in the new core set of Hearthstone, except Anixia will summon 1/1s at the end of every turn to be cast in her new form. Yeah, it's actually potentially a playable card at that point.
I thought you was going to say it's potentially broken.
I won't go that far.
Well, there's True Seeker at last. For the first time this series.
I mean, yeah,
Feels
you can
like
get
it,
down the Libram of Judgment for that matter. I suppose saying you can get down the Libram was the least helpful statement I've ever made about this hand.
And at this point, no real reason to over-equip the Libram of Judgment. It means he loses a minion in the form of that 1/1 with the mana, of course, but he can still heal next turn.
And here they come. It was only a matter of time before these bigger portals start coming down, and already, my goodness, like Cenarius Strongman looks disgusting.
I know some classic Hearthstone is coming out soon, but here's a little bit of a taster. And Cenarius was just one of the cards you would face against Druid.
Isn't it going to cost 8 mana now? I think that's one of the buffs they're bringing through.
Oh, really?
To Corsair, I think so.
Well played.
Wow, well played. That taunt's not going to be enough, and he knows there's more where that came from. After a back-and-forth series, it is going to be Diana who takes it over Pain. A very close one, honestly, with both players having some great outcomes and some terrible outcomes throughout this series. So I'd say overall, it probably did even up, but Diana, I think, at one moment in that Druid game was in a rough spot and just got a couple of very good draws, mainly that overflow.
Yeah, indeed. That was pretty close to the dream draw for Diana. Obviously, Zephyrus, he got the ramp, he got the Ysera, all the draw, everything you can need. I think, to be perfectly honest, while you were right that Pain had some nice luck at the start of the series, these Paladin draws have just been absolutely brutal. I mean, what are you meant to do in situations like that? He got no minion development against the Demon Hunter or against the Druid at the end there. He just had to throw down these weapons, swing face, didn't hit the card draw, didn't hit the cheapening effects that he needed on his Librams. My heart goes out to him because there was little that he could have done at that point, to be perfectly honest. Does mean going down to 2-1, he's definitely not out of the running to get through to top 16, but it becomes a significantly steeper hill to climb in order to get there now.
Yeah, and just some of these outcomes, right? You know, the Katrina Muerta was a big deal because then that's another little hurdle in the way. This was the interesting turn for me in just the order to go around this. He did make this Omu turn when I think he could have played Ysera. It wasn't as if either play was particularly wrong or right. Definitely just stylistic choice there, but it did end up paying off in the long run. But as you can see, he got the ramp, he got the early game, but he was starving right now. But luckily for him, he got hold of that overflow, and then the game just went nuts from there.
Yeah, pain by name, pain by nature. I think it's got to be for him now, because that's a tough one to walk off. You're going to have to, you know, take a deep breath, get yourself a drink, and hope that you are in a good mental state for round 4, which is, of course, going to be coming up very shortly after we, I believe, are going to be taking a quick look at some of the other matches that were happening around the tavern in round 3.
Yeah, as usual, we cover one main match and then we have, you know, dip our toes into some other games and see how things been going across the board. And I know, and I'll say this now, this Masters Tour already, we've had some great matchups. If you just look at player names, like already, and normally we have, you know, like a sprinkling, okay, here's a sick match over there. But this one, it's just all, I feel like someone is just writing the script, right? And they're like, what would be a sick matchup? Okay, put them together, it'll be great. Clearly not how it works, of course, before anyone pointing fingers. But no, we've had some great matchups and it's going to continue. This is still only even day 1 of 3, so tons of Hearthstone coming up. But for us, we are done for now, and we'll be right back though with some more coverage of round 3. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.
Hey,
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Masters for Ironforge. My name is TJ.
And I'm Lorinda. I can hear TJ. I'm not sure he can hear me, so I'm going to talk for a moment, and we are going to get into these games, and it's the rest of round 3. Yeah, TJ has escaped for now. We're going to see some more matches from round 3. I think we're going to go into Hoy and Juristus. Hoy, of course, played in the 2017 World Championships, while Juristus has been around for a long time, but his crowning achievement was winning the Battle Rift tournament in 2019. And you've never seen a happier person in your life as Juristus when that happened. He beat Orange in the final there and picked up, I think, $4,000 for the honour. But honestly, the happiness that came out of him when he won that was something to behold. But he's going to have it to do today to beat Hoy, who is on something of a comeback. Hoy came very close to getting into Grandmasters, like very, very close. And then, as he didn't, he took a little bit of time away, I feel. But we are seeing Hoy now do very well once again this season. He's in this tournament, and he is currently 2-0 down, but he is on 2 wins and no losses so far. As you can see, he's going to be playing the Bomb Warrior in this next game. Pretty standard looking deck that we've known for 2 years now for most of these cards. Gallon coming second place in Las Vegas with probably like 26 cards the same. And I think
Hello, Neil. I'm back. I apologize for that.
Okay. Welcome
Yes,
back.
I
So
am.
you've not missed much.
That
I've
we're
told
looking
people
at
who they
Hoy's
are.
Bomb Warrior on the screen.
Yeah, Hoy's Bomb Warrior. He's 2-0 behind, but he's going to be queuing up this Bomb Warrior in game number 3. Just saying that Gallon
Yes.
plays something
So,
similar.
Bomb Warrior... Yeah, Warrior was the warrior that I honestly expected the least. Maybe like Silas OTK, you can throw in there as an honorable mention for warrior deck that I would expect to see the least. But I have been looking around. It does seem like there's a few Bomb Warrior players that are making their way into that 3-0 mark. You know, maybe I'll eat my words at the end of this event if the top 16 is filled with Bomb Warriors.
It always is. It always has been. It's like the deck that just won't die somehow. It just hangs in there, just bombing away, and has done for a long time. But I think TJ's vanished once again, so I'm just going to keep talking at this point and talk about this Bomb Warrior. So Gallon got to the top 2 in Las Vegas with it. I think we got that far, and then just became a Blizzard game designer. So that seems like a good start for Hoy if he can get it done with the Bomb Warrior over this weekend. Juristus, I believe, is going to be playing Rogue. I know it's not on the screen, but as I've run out of things to say in this rather awkward segment, I'm going to talk about Juristus' Rogue just for a moment, for something to talk about. And he is playing the Whirl Kick Rogue. So it's going to be a fairly tight one, but of course, Juristus is 2-0 up. He's just got to get any old win with his Rogue, as TJ has morphed into Raven. How are you, Raven?
I am the... don't be too disappointed, but it looks like I'll join you for this one, Lorinda. You just have to remind me who's playing, because I was just not quite looking for a second, but it looks like we're staring at Hoy's Bomb Warrior.
Raven. And Hoy is 2-0 behind, I believe, and Juristus is going to be playing the Rogue.
Cool.
And I've just introduced Hoy. I spoke about Juristus quite a lot, his win in Battle Rift, but Hoy, I think you'll know more about Hoy than me. I just mentioned he played Worlds. You might want to tell us a little bit about Hoy and what you know of him.
Yeah, so Hoy's pretty old school, actually, in terms of Hearthstone. One of the players that was not well known. He wasn't, a well-known, gamer or, on any streaming or anything beforehand. But very early on, he made a name for himself performing well in tournaments. And I think it was at a tournament in the UK, actually. I first saw him play firsthand, and I met him, and I was super impressed with his decision-making. And he's now got, a really strong background in plenty of card games, and he just always has very solid solid heads-up play. And I think he's taken like on and off breaks with Hearthstone over the past couple of years, just trying out a few different things. But overall, I think whenever he does play and whenever he is, engaged, he always does well. So I'm pretty excited to see him because I've just not cast Hoy for a while now, so it's always pretty good. And also, there are some fun things that he has a twin brother who is also very good at Hearthstone, so that made for some fun at some events as well.
Yeah, and his brother, in fact, sort of has been playing, I think, more than Hoy himself over the last 18 months. We see him in quite a few events, and there is one of them there in that picture. I'm one of the people who can't tell them apart, so...
I can, that's definitely the original Hoy, I'll choose to say. Original to Hearthstone Hoy. But it does look like we are going to get into the game. Euristus, of course, as you probably already mentioned, 2-0 up in this match we're going to cover here. And going to be on the Rogue on the bottom against Hoy's Bomb Warrior.
Yep, and I was saying that basically Juris is in a really good spot here, 2-0 ahead. This is an okay matchup, and even if he loses this one, he's still got 2 more chances to get it done. So, looking good, but you never can tell in these events. You don't want to write Hoy out early ever, basically.
Yeah, and this is a pretty tricky matchup because Rogue, of course, has a ton of ways to not only get on board, but also just, almost like trick out the rest of the game, right? They always end up generating tons of additional resources that you can't really factor in when you're the opponent, right? You can't say, okay, well, these are the cards they're going to play with, so I'll play around this. Once they start that generation, things can go haywire pretty quick, but Hoy does have access to a Wrench Caliber in hand already, and the Horde Pillager follow-up, and the Iron Bee Cowl in case one of those early questings come down as well. So I think Hoy's got a really good starting toolkit here to really pile on the pressure to Euristus now.
Yeah, and Euristus has got a slightly weak hand, so he's going to go for this monstrous questing and hope it sticks. There's only one Owl in Hoy's deck, so it makes sense to go for this. But this is going to be a disappoint from Euristus' point of view here. He does at least split up the attack to some degree here, though, splitting it with the cat.
Yeah, and I think, although this is... I think there might be a world where Wrench Caliber gets played. Is that crazy? Okay, looks like he's going for the Ethereal. Because my point being that, obviously, the question hits and can get really big and do tons of damage. But if Owl came down this turn, the rest of the turn looks so bad that I started to wonder whether it would be worth playing Owl when he could have gone like Wrench Caliber this turn, kill the Pharaoh,
right,
and then Owl next turn with maybe Upgrade, swing again, and then you get Horde Pillager the turn after. So pretty interesting turns there from Hoy. I think personally I would have looked at the Wrench Caliber and just took the hit, but of course there's the fear that things could spiral out of control.
Yeah, the problem with Foxy and Secret Passage existing is that hit might be 11 or 12 or even some nonsense amount, and suddenly you're wishing you'd played your Owl. If it's only the 6 plus 1 or 2 like normal mana curves would allow, then sure, take 8, sure. But that number could have been absolutely gigantic, and you don't know, there might be another questing coming down to back it up, as we see now, and then suddenly you've got an Owl to deal with 2 questings, and it all falls apart.
Yeah, it's one of the very scary things about Rogue is Secret Passage is just such a weird card. You read it and you're like, okay, that seems pretty strong. And then it's one of those things is, what is the card text really? And it's, I don't like this hand. Let me just draw another one and play it. It's like, wow, okay, yes, that is broken. We do see Hoy getting that Wrench Caliber down now with that upgrade. And most importantly, the upgrade makes him be able to clear the Danger Quest in Adventure, which is the one that still has its ability live. So Hoy taking some damage, but starting to build forward now with that cutting class available, shield block, Blade Storm for emergencies as well. I think this game's still got a lot to it.
Yeah, you're saying Blade Storm for emergencies, but it looks so nice just for the next turn, honestly, to clear up a lot of this. He will try and hold on to it, but the way his hand is currently sort of constituted, he just won't be able to, I don't think. He might have to play it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be so bad at all because at least we can see it wouldn't be so bad because Euristus' follow-up is lacking, isn't it? There's Foxy Fraud, a Tome of Intellect, and an Eviscerate. That's not follow-up you want because I think Euristus needs like one more board's worth of attack, if that makes sense, to really put Hoy in the danger zone.
16 is definitely starting to just tiptoe that way, though. And Hoy hasn't yet turned the corner where he can actually like impose his own threats on the game. He is totally on the defensive yet, although obviously that is what Bomb Warrior is designed to do to a large degree.
And also bear in mind, he does have that shield block, sword and board. He's got plenty of armor generation to be able to recover a lot of this damage that he's taken in the early game.
And then, as if by magic, suddenly Hoy still has 4 cards in hand, he still has cutting class, he's on 18, and Euristus has no board.
Yeah. And I really like that armor up as well, because on one hand you could just say, oh, we'll just play cutting class, draw cards, use the card now, but why not? Just gain the armor now. Cutting class is still 1 mana, even if somehow this weapon gets destroyed, he just has Pillager into cutting class and it's still fine.
I talk about the craziness that the Warrior can do, but here we go. Euristus just building a board. He's got Passage in hand. He's got Lackey in hand. He's got a Colossus in a couple of turns' time. Yeah, he's doing all right as well, but these bombs are going to start adding up now.
Yeah, and Krasnov is looking pretty good, mainly because he can still Krasnov Shield Slam this turn, whereas if he just swung and then went like, if he just didn't play Horde Pillager, then he has Quartermaster something this turn, which just doesn't feel as strong. I think I do like the Krasnov Shield Slam here.
Yeah, Krasnov's just big enough to be irritating as well. It's not a big minion by any means. It's in there to buff your weapons, of course, but Rogue doesn't really do big minions. It just does these things that fall over, but it makes so many of them that it's terrifying. So Krasnov might end up being about a 4-for-1 by the end of all this.
I'm very interested to see if Hoy swings face here. If he shield slams and then just swings face or kills the miscreant. I like the swing face because suddenly he's got 10 damage just on that weapon and he's got 2 more weapons in his hand, right? Yeah. So he's got all the damage he needs plus the bombs, of course. So I really like that face swing from him here.
Nice pickup though for Euristus. This could put him right back in the driver's seat if Jandice is behaving herself. She kind of is. That's amazing. This is normally a snap decision, but it's so much harder against Warrior, of course. Your 5/1 stealth minion can actually be killed here.
Yeah, tough call as well, because I think a part of Euristus will want this Titanic Lackey down, but he either puts it on the weakened minion, which is bad, or he puts it on a minion he's going to use to trade into the Krasnov anyway, which again means like the miscreant will be a 1/2, which also feels bad.
And the other problem is he made that decision very quickly because it's the backwards decision to normal. He made it very quickly, and now he's got to decide how to get himself out of this slightly awkward position he put himself into. But yeah, you oofed, because there's a Pyro. That's a massive clock now for Euristus. 3 turns, game over.
Yeah, and it just alters the way he can play as well, right? He might not have to play as aggressive on board, as long as he just pushes a little bit of damage. He might be able to get away with just building up this Eviscerate into Pyroblast for turns 9 and 10. Fortunately for him, though, after that brawl, he's only going to be the Lackey that lives, and honestly, with this armor gain and, as I mentioned, the weapons, Hoy can just ignore that 1/1. If it was any of the other minions, he might consider trading it away, but no problem at all to forget about that little 1/1.
Yeah, and he's just gaining health every turn. I know that's his job, but given what he's been facing, it's amazing how good this deck just holds in there. It's gone from 14 to 16 to 23, and all the time Euristus has had stuff on board to worry about. And suddenly Hoy's just about to win. It's insane.
It's really close though, isn't it? Because the Wrench Caliber swing next turn, if it goes face, will put Euristus at a 2-bomb lethal. But we do know Euristus' hand. This turn there's Eviscerate. Well, sorry, his next turn, apologies, turn 9, will have Eviscerate available to punch through some of the armor he may gain this turn, and then there's that 10-mana Pyroblast. So this game is actually pretty close, and honestly, that second Horde Pillager is one of the, if not the worst draw in his deck, because he just doesn't need it.
Yeah, how many bombs are in there? About 4, give or take? There tends to be more than you imagine when you try and guess, but I think it's about 4.
I think this is probably the Draconid, right? Just as a safety.
Yeah. He can't see the Pyroblast that we're thinking about. We're both thinking, oh yeah, but it doesn't stop Pyroblast. But Hoy doesn't know that, of course, although he might have an idea. In fact, that was something that was very good about Hoy's play when he was at his peak. Like, his hand reading was up there with the very best of them.
Oh, and there's bomb number 1. Not bomb number 2, though.
Could we see Hoy and Crane like battling it out for this?
Oh, I'd love it. I'd love it. This is also not super straightforward either. Like on the surface, Ice Barrier feels great. That's what you want, more health. But Potion of Illusion would hit another one maker, and also maybe more importantly that Titanic Lackey, so he could taunt this turn.
Let's go for the barrier, which is sort of the initial instinct pick, right?
And I think that's correct, but I do think there is value in looking at that potion to see exactly what it would achieve.
I mean, you're not stopping bombs with this, so... Okay. Well, Hoy is out of this. Somehow is still alive to Pyroblast next turn. He's really looked after his health total.
He hasn't done enough to make up the difference yet, though, so I guess it might well be Colossus of the Moon. I guess he can't now.
Die, yeah.
He can't now. Might end up just Pyroblasting the Deathwing and having to hope that Colossus sticks the turn after, which is a pretty long-term plan.
Oh. Yeah, you've got 2 choices at 10 mana and neither of them stop you from dying.
Oof.
So now you have to draw a card that might just blow you up. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's
Oh
not
no!
it.
He has had terrible rolls from those cats.
I give up.
That's not going to be enough. Hoy under a lot of pressure throughout that game, but he managed to even it up there, just gain all the armor back, keep in a safe space there with that armor and health overall. It just wasn't enough for Euristus, and he really did just run a little bit dry towards the end there. He had the Pyroblast plan, but there was none of the filler. He needed to push like an extra 8 damage over the course of a few turns, and really, that Blade Storm from Hoy really helped clean a lot of that up, right?
Yeah, and I believe that Hoy now has Druid. Oh, it's on this there. I've been looking on the screen. It's Druid and Priest left against this Rogue. So, still got a lot of work to do to get back into this match, but you can't win 3 without winning 1. So, that's where
that old saying.
Yeah. That's the way it works, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, though, here you can see just some of the key turns and moments there. The Krasinov being really good at just pounding on that pressure, pushing even more damage. And you saw it straight away. Obviously, the brawls and the clears helped, but Hoy just noting at the exact point it's okay to stop trading and go face with that weapon was really, really strong there. And suddenly put Euristus under a lot of pressure. But Colossus of the Moon, the Pyroblast, a good plan, but not really enough to get the job done, even with that Ice Barrier. So yeah, Hoy does fight back. He has his Priest and Druid, as you mentioned, both of which are Highlander variants, but Hoy's Priest deck is actually pretty spicy. I'm not 100% sure if this is what he'll queue next, but his Priest is a Highlander Cthulhu Priest that also includes like a Hecklebot in there. There's the Ogre Mancer, which is becoming more popular in multiple decks and multiple classes, which is pretty cool, as well as a few other little spicy tools. So pretty interesting approach to Priest, and I think Priest itself is one of the classes where, at least I think, we've been seeing a lot more variation than I imagined we would. I thought it was going to be either this one Highlander Priest or this one Galakron, 2-off Priest, and that's it, where that has not been the case so far.
No, I mean, we tend to assume with Highlander decks these days that, you've got 30 unique cards, and that's about your limit for what you can find in your collection of playable cards.
Yeah, there are only 30 cards that you can pick.
Build 30 unique card deck. Okay, here they are. But actually, Hoy's just found, like you say, the Hecklebot in particular. And that's a decent tech against several decks in the meta. He's found different ways to go about this. I hope we get to see it.
Well, it does look like we're going to start with Druid first, which is also Highlander Druid. I've just come off the back of casting the Highlander Druid in the previous match as well, which it did look close, but it was still good enough to get there with some of just the sheer late game power of the Druid. And honestly, I was speaking to Derek about this, how strange that one of the most powerful cards, if not the most in the deck, is actually the card that just breaks your Highlander archetype in the form of Ysera Unleashed. So just pretty funny overall that that's just the way the card is and the way the deck works. But we see almost just a nice display of some of the powerful tools in this list from Hoy in this opening mulligan.
Yeah, first time I played this deck, slammed the Zephyrus on like turn 10 to win the game, and it like didn't go off. I'm like, what? Why? Yeah, Ysera. Unlucky. You only do it once, but you do it.
I imagine this is going to be an Umbral Owl, and Elise throw, but I wouldn't mind the Zephyrus and Speaker Gidra keep. It looks like Hoy decides to throw the Gidra as well. I just always maybe have an overreaction to all the little minions Rogue can chuck out early on, and Gidra even on 3 could be okay to clean some stuff up. But if you are keeping Zephyrus, you're probably going to Zephyrus into Wildgrowth.
Yeah, that's the point, right? It was my instinct as well to keep Gidra for the exact same reason, but you're going to go Zephyrus, you're going to try and find more ramp if possible. And you know what stops 1/1s is like 7/7 taunts that come back to life, and 9/9 taunts, and goodness knows what else this thing throws at you. That slows them down.
Hoy not going to go for Zephyrus on curve, at least potentially. He could still play out, of course, with coin. But looks like he's going to go fishing for something else here. But honestly, Lorinda, none of these look great.
Oh, how can you not say the Eagle is not great? Oh my goodness. You'll have all of Fino's fan club after you.
Time waits for no one.
Okay, I don't think it's that great versus Rogue. How about that? And Hoy agrees, so take that.
But he does it. Here's the Eagle. See?
Oh yeah, the one in hand is fine.
But yeah, point taken. You do need to challenge the board, and that's the problem that you have as the Druid. You want to get that ramp going for the reasons we've already mentioned, but at the same time, you can't take too much time out to ramp, otherwise the Rogue will start to just beat you up.
Oh, backstab pretty nice there for Euristus. This is what I mean. Some of those calls are hard to make. Like, honestly, I'd love to know what players' opinions are on moments like this, where how likely do you really think that Passage is going to get you something good when you have to spend 1 mana to play it and you're on turn 3? You know what I mean? It's really tough.
Yeah.
But it pays off, and I think Secret Passage, although of course extremely powerful, is a tough card to play well, because these decision points and timings are very, very important.
Yeah, Foxy Fraud. When we first playtested Passage, when Passage first was released, like you and myself and a couple of other casters were playing it. It's like, well, when do we play the Passage? And people are like, oh, you wait until you're out of cards, then you play it. And that wasn't necessarily wrong. I was always advocating, try and push your luck a little bit. But now you've got Foxy Fraud. You can just play the Passage whenever you fancy it now. And like you said, you just get a new hand that you can just play. The critical mass has been reached of nonsense cards.
I wonder.
And that's it, isn't it? You just get to re-roll your hand for a turn, basically, which is very, very powerful. But here, again, Hoy has some interesting decisions. He has the ability to get that overgrowth out with the coin or innovate, of course. And the other hand, he has coin Ogre Mancer, which could be powerful at this point, although this 5/2 Foxy Fraud is a bit of a problem for that, honestly. Or he could just Zephyrus, like coin Zephyrus Cleave or something if he really wants to. It would work.
The old Zephyrus Cleave combo. Oh my. He's gone for the Ogre Mancer, so he's going to just try and stem the flow. Obviously, desirable minion to have in play. But it is only 1 minion for now. And Rogue, despite the fact it can do a lot of crazy shenanigans with its spells, it can get away without using them as well. It can just dump minions on the board like it's doing now and continue the beating. How can anyone not like Plunderer?
I mean, it's extremely powerful, right?
Yeah.
It always gets at least some kind of job done. Here, though, again, like, Euristus is just doing what this deck does well. It just has a load of little cards that are problems for your opponent. And honestly, the weird shapes you create on board do not line up very well with a lot of removal that players are playing. So it's a bit of a tough one. I'm very interested to see when Hoy goes off with this Zephyrus, though, because multiple times now it has been reasonably playable. It is, if you played it, it would have achieved something pretty strong in the game, but he's choosing to hold on to it.
Yeah, and there comes a point, and I think we're reaching that point where you have to say, well, this hasn't gone, this is like ridiculous Rogue. This is what Rogue does. If you weren't going to use the Zephyrus, why did you keep it?
Right.
You know, so this is no like shocker that Hoy is facing down here. So I assume he has a plan for it, but it's just been in hand a little longer than I would like to have seen.
Yeah, for now, even this turn, like, Overflow with the Anubis Defender looks okay, but you know it's just going to die, and there's still going to be under pressure the turn after. Overflow could unlock some options, and maybe next turn is the Zephyrus turn, but I feel like now, Hoy... Well, this is it. I feel like now Hoy has way more options than he could possibly need for the whole rest of this game. And it might just be a little bit too slow.
I don't think it's lethal, but it's super close the way it's gone. Obviously, putting the taunt in the way is another 5 health gained. There's no simple way around that, but a lot of damage being churned out here.
This guy's tough.
Interesting, he does choose to use the SI7 agent. That's damage that can't go over the top of the next taunt that comes down. Sometimes against Druid, it's good to just keep the damage in your hand that can remove.
And also as well here, it does just keep his World Kick combos going, right? Because look now, there's just a hooked Scimitar in his hand, which is tons of damage next turn anyway.
Yeah, it's so much damage.
And this is it, right? It's just too late. The Zephyrus has been in hand all game. Even Zephyrus backstab. And then I think Coin into Overgrowth was available as a line of play for Hoy, and it's just been sat there. And now, what can Zephyrus even give if Zephyrus clears the board, which it can do at this point? Are you expecting Rogue to not keep the pressure on for 7 health? Like, that's the problem, right?
I think he probably kept it for the wild growth, and then he drew the Overgrowth anyway and decided not to use it. So it probably makes more sense than it looks to us. Like, he just changed plan because it was a better ramp.
Mm-hmm.
But it does look weird that it's still sat there when it's a perfectly functioning removal spell. Like, going back to when I sort of laughed a little bit when you said cleave, actually, that would have taken a lot of this damage off the board going back.
Yeah.
And now he's at the mercy of top decks from Euristus as well.
So he has cleared the board, he has 7 health, 8 with the hero power, and now he does have the chance, at least, to Zephyrus into a heal card next turn. He still has the Mark of the Wild as well to put a taunt up. This is all on his side, of course. We can see that the Scimitar is a bit of a nightmare right now for him, as it's going to pile on even more pressure.
What makes something...
Yeah, and then there's also the Miscreant as well that's just often just more damage.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. This is nice, though. It's just more stuff. All that Euristus will want to do right now is keep the board full and keep making Hoy have to defend, because Druid is not good at defending this, right? You've just seen like the swipes came out that turn to help clear up the board, like the double swipe. But Hoy has to do something pretty impressive. He looks like he's going for like the value Elise here.
And we haven't mentioned it, but the Kidnapper's a massive deal in Justice's hand as well. Like, that just stops Hoy having the Druid solution of play one big thing.
I can't wait. If Hoy does this Elise, I just want to know what he wants to do here, because he's got mana because he'll have 2 Lightning Blooms. I just want to know what the end goal is. He has double Zephyrus, but what's he doing to clear this board, or put a stop to this to make him at least survive another turn?
Is he hoping to clear with one Zephyrus and then heal with another? Is that the plan?
Oh yeah, turn after turn, sure, yeah. Shadow Flame will clear now. And then next turn he'll have to Zephyrus heal.
But yeah. That's all I've got. But yeah. Right, what's the Miscreant going to offer? I think it's time. Maybe it's not, actually.
I think he could just go questing here, right? I guess he knows. So, okay, Euristus has to reevaluate the whole game now because he knows there's still a Zephyrus in hand.
Yes.
So if this was the one Zephyrus, I think it would be reasonable to say like go questing into Scimitar and just hit face and hope that's going to get there with the help of Miscreant next turn. But now he does have to take a little bit of a step back, take the foot off the gas a little bit. And this Winged Guardian I think is a really good choice because there's no great answer to this card.
Yeah, not that answers... I mean, it's only 1 damage, but that answers the other totems and stuff as well. And, yeah, the Miscreant can at least +1 something, as long as you have something in play. Obviously, it's got damage to face available too. It's so close for Euristus here.
And although Hoy is overloaded this turn, which does affect his Zephyrus outcomes, of course, he can just bloom again to get back up to 10, right? To have the full range of normal options, I suppose. If any of that would help.
I wonder.
Yeah, and it's interesting now that it does look like Hoy, if he gets this right, and I don't know what right is at this point, there's so many options, but if he gets this right, it looks like he might be able to stabilize.
Time waits for no one. Your wish is
Gonna go Zephyrus, not gonna bloom, which means it's a 6 mana offering, or at least, you know, Black Knight, Argus, Faceless. Oh, he's
Bit of
gonna
an
go Black
expensive
Knight.
selection.
Okay. He kills off the majority of the damage. There's still the 1/1 on board. Is he gonna... He doesn't bloom hero power for the extra health. So there's that. He's actually just 1 off right now.
Surely he gets it from... Oh, it's not easy. He didn't pick up anything cheap. Just wants to get his Miscreant down and a couple of lackeys that win the game, but he kind of can't because he needs to play the Scimitar as well. And picking up Edwin is just not where he needed to be to trigger the combo. Okay. So, nope, didn't find it. There were combinations there of lackeys that would win the game on the spot, and I think that's what he was looking for.
Yeah, Eviscerate, Deadly... Oh, Deadly Poison wouldn't get him there, but yeah, there were combos of cards that would actually get him there.
Choose soon.
Yeah, you've got to point it at the face now, Euristus. You've just got to. But it's looking now like Hoy should be able to get out of this.
Should he?
Seems ambitious.
He has Bloom Mark of the Wild, right? And I think that's the trick. He has
Okay.
Bloom Mark of the Wild Strongman now. So he has taunts up. And he definitely needs 2 taunts because we can see Kidnappers there.
Yeah. And it's so easy when we can see the hand, but part of me feels that Hoy should have an idea that that is Kidnapper. Which would be an impossibly hard read for most people, but yeah, this is Hoy.
Yeah, I think there's almost no reason not to do this, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not saving it for anything else. The Bloom isn't going to help with any real future turns. Everything he's got is workable anyway in the near future, so I like this.
Not only that, but counting up, there's 28 there.
Oh, well, that makes even more sense.
And I reckon that's what he was just pausing over, just making sure he gets that lethal setup as well as all the other sensible things we talked about.
Well, that could just be lethal.
Raven, is he going to find it?
I mean, there's a lot of things that help, right?
But is he going to find it? Is the One Thief going to do it?
Yes.
What you to call this, yes or
Yes. I'm going for yes.
no? Okay. You're the resident mage fan.
Kind of.
And
Does
Blizzard's
it?
pretty handy.
Yeah, Blizzard's pretty good right now. So, do I win the game? And 3 damage as well, because that spell damage totem on board is a little bit
Yeah.
nice too.
Because, of course, Rogue is blizzarding you with a spell damage totem on board. Why wouldn't it be?
Naturally. I don't think there's anything else that's worth, because he just
Soon.
dies, right?
Yeah,
Like,
the fact that he dies.
Mana Biscuit looks great because he's got a Questing and Van Cleef in hand, right? You're always going to look at that card, but it doesn't deal with the threat, which is the board right now. So yeah, I think this is really good because he kills 1 taunt, then he has Kidnapper for next turn.
Yeah. And then he should be able to fall over the finishing line, but here's some more removal.
And also, if Eustace has been keeping track, he also knows there's a second Mark of the Wild, right? Because he'll know what Elise copied.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can rely on any of the players at least at the top end of this tournament to have all that down. You sense the tension. Both players taking quite a while over plays they would normally make pretty quickly.
Right.
It was one mistake and you have lost.
And I'm not... This is not a dig at Hoy at all, but the game being this close, at least in this fashion, is definitely a reflection of how he chose to play the early game. And he greeded out the Zephyrus with the Elise and everything, and although that's paid off for him to an extent because he doubled up on his huge resources, which is insane, but it has left him in this precarious place where 3 health, and eviscerate and he loses the game. Right, if he can generate 1, so it's so tense, and both players have had enough input to make it this way.
Right, well kick time.
This is tough, right? Because suddenly the hand is actually pretty clunky and expensive for Eustace. So a part of me is wondering whether it's like big old whelp and see what the draw is, but then he just dies. I think Eustace just has to get something.
Yep. Oh my goodness, is he going to do it this time?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you.
By yes, I meant any one thief that gets played this game will win. Oh my.
Cone of Cold, does that sort out for another turn? So next turn we can just have this panic again.
I'm pretty sure Cone of Cold keeps him alive, right? Just because he's got 21 health, but each minion has so much damage anyway. He should be able to freeze out a good chunk of damage because there's nothing small.
But next turn Hoy goes to 5, which takes Eviscerate out of the equation.
Yeah, unless he can just swing in with the dagger as well, right? Or a minion. Because he does also, like, Eustace has gained a 7/6 this turn.
Sure.
Which is a significant minion, right?
Sure, that is one way of describing a 7/6 in Rogue.
Well, it currently trades with the 2 biggest minions on the board, so...
Pretty significant, yeah. It's killing
and
Druid
there's
minion.
still the Kidnapper for getting rid of 1 taunt.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Every time you sort of look at beginner level decks and you see Kidnapper, you think, oh, that's a good card. And then you see a game like this where Kidnapper is almost the nuts and just doesn't have the time to get played.
Right.
But it should be good.
Hey, 4 mana Assassinate here, though, would be good.
Yeah, it would.
Looks like Hoy staring at Dragon Queen Alexstrasza number 2. He's just one Nazari away from a good time right now.
Eustace has just been trying to draw direct damage for so many turns.
Not the best.
Hi.
Praise Netherwing. Puts himself to 1 health. Probably not the best choice there.
Not ideal. But that's a lot of chunky damage again. I think both players have had like lethal chances for about 6 turns.
Swindle.
Surely now, though.
And there's the Whirl Kick.
Yeah, you get both chances at it now.
This is just tons of stuff.
Strike like the winds.
Okay, that's funny.
Oh my goodness, secret passage. Surely he gets there. This is actually getting painful now. I'm assuming there is an Eviscerate just by how...
There it is.
There it is.
It was just a matter of time, but that was so close. Hoy showing how to, almost reminiscent of Yala recently, or the past year or so of GM, where Yala showed us how to get the most out of every single card in his deck. Hoy doing the same, going for absolute maximum value, just cut it a little bit too close. And Euristus there with the Rogue. Again, the sheer generation. He did have to dig himself out of some problems with the help of those One Thieves with that Blizzard and Cone of Cold to make him survive the reverse push there. Because look at, you think about how close Hoy's health was. Hoy basically lethal on board 3 turns or something, and it just wasn't enough because Euristus kept getting freeze from his generation. So really, really close game there, and closer, honestly, than I thought it was going to be. But congratulations to Euristus for taking that game.
Yeah, but also signs that Hoy is on the way back. Like, he did judge that pretty well. Like you say, cut it a little bit too fine, maybe. But the fact that it was close means that he's got his eye back in. He knows what's going on.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is what Rogue does, so I'm not saying that there's any, overlook or anything, but there was a Winged Guardian involved for Euristus to keep him alive. Then there was a Blizzard and a Cone of Cold, as you can see here, which basically each turn one of those 3 things that were generated were played. It kept him alive, because look how many turns here that there was so much power on the board, but it wasn't quite enough. And with the Rogue's ability, of course, to draw a ton of cards, and as we mentioned at the start, the secret passage to say, nope, this hand's not good, I'm going to redraw another one, it was just enough to get that second Eviscerate.
Yeah, I mean, that last turn just summed up Rogue, didn't it?